Aloha, I'm Desmond Hakias with Healing with Aloha podcast. This podcast is about bringing hope and healing with Aloha, and we have the honor and privilege of having the CEO of the Aslan Foundation, Cynthia Peschard, and she's all the way in California, and I'm in Hawaii. However, what I value what she is doing. It allows people to connect with others that can relate to having a loved one who possibly, was impacted as a survivor, by having death by suicide. And, she's been through a lot, but then she's desired her family to bring hope to other people. And so with further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Cynthia. Hi, Cynthia. Oh, can you press the mute button? There.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. I'm so grateful because of Instagram. I was able to discover your foundation and just to learn what you guys are doing to educate people about mental health, and just knowing that there's resources out there that we can get help in, and that your foundation has taken the time to provide that information on your website through your blog, and just the type of services that, not services, but like what you're doing to help other families.
Yeah, thank you. We definitely realized that there was a need for a pool of organizations that provided services, especially towards adolescents. There was a lot of resources in our area, at least, that provided mental health services for adults, but in terms of services for adolescents, it was limited. So we realized that it was a need that hadn't been met yet. And it was something that we felt could make a difference in for other families who were going through maybe what we were going through, and could definitely use that type of resource.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about your personal story with Andrew?
Sure. So when Andrew was a freshman in high school, he started exhibiting signs of mental illness, and actually even communicating them to us. And I work in the healthcare profession, so my immediate response was to take him to see a healthcare provider. And it was difficult to access services for him because, as I said, in our area, even though we live in California, heart of Silicon Valley, the number of services available for adolescents was very limited. We had a really difficult time finding clinicians who were taking new patients. Inpatient services were also very limited. The number of inpatient beds for adolescents experiencing a healthcare crisis was very limited. And it was a very frustrating situation for us. A lot of times we weren't met with empathy. We weren't met with competent care. There was a lot of hoops to jump through in terms of insurance. So there was a lot of barriers and challenges we had to get through in order to get him care. And in the meantime, he's suffering, he's struggling. His symptoms are worse at other times and better at some times, but despite what his symptoms were, he still needed care.
Yes.
And it was several years that we went through this process of trying to get him consistent quality care. And it really, it was actually quite traumatic for all of us, for the whole family, as we were dealing with Andrew's mental illness and his symptoms and the challenges of trying to get care and yet still maintain a normal, quote unquote, family life for the rest of my children. Yeah. Andrew's the youngest of 5 kids. And so, yeah, just trying to maintain a normal family life, but still also dealing with it was honestly one crisis after another. Just when we thought things were going okay, then there would be another crisis. And I felt as his mom could never really let down my guard,
Yeah.
which is why trying to find consistent quality care was such a challenge. Unfortunately, on Christmas Eve on 2017, Andrew was 19 years old and died by suicide. And it was also the days leading up to that day was another probably week of Andrew in crisis. He had been doing okay, or so we thought.
Yeah.
And the weekend prior, he was in crisis and received care, but was discharged from the hospital, and within 48 hours had died by suicide. So that in itself was just horrific for us.
Yes.
Andrew at that time, like I said, was 19. So he was already past the age of where I could
make decisions for him. Oh.
Correct.
So although
Yeah.
he had his, he was going through his challenges with his mental health, that he was old enough to make his own. And so as much as you guys felt like he needed your assistance in receiving the proper care, that they would just base it off of him consenting that he's okay and he'll be fine. Oh,
yeah. Okay. And so that was also just another really difficult issue that it's hard for any family. We tried communicating with Andrew prior to his crisis in terms of, we are your safety net. We are here for you. If you need anything, you can come to us. But mental illness has a way of speaking lies to a person's head and heart. And even though I think Andrew, at the time that we were telling him these things, did believe them, when he was in crisis, those other voices are louder.
Yes.
And it was probably about a year after his death by suicide that I was really able to be any kind of voice for him in terms of suicide prevention and mental health advocacy. Our whole family struggled for at least a year, and it's been almost 3, and we are still having a hard time dealing with his absence. And at least for myself, the only thing that I can really gain any type of solace from is in now being his voice in terms of advocating for suicide prevention and mental health awareness, which is what led to the establishment of the Aslan Foundation. We have 3 branches. The first branch is our scholarship, and that scholarship goes to graduating high school seniors who have struggled with their mental health throughout their high school career. And we felt that was really important.
Mateo? I'm sorry, this is in San Mateo? Okay.
Correct, in San Mateo County. I felt this was really important because there are so many scholarships available to students out there, but they're all related to certain things that maybe students with mental health have had mental health challenges, right? Trying to have like a high GPA or succeed academically can be difficult when someone has a chronic illness because they can't make it to class. Sometimes they're struggling with a mental health condition that's chronic. So academically, they may not qualify for those type of scholarships.
Fulfilling their academics. It's not that they don't want to be there, it's just because, like you said, they're struggling.
Right. Sports, athletics, that can also be difficult to qualify for that type of scholarship. So all of the traditional eligibility that students that are offered to students in terms of scholarships
They
are
don't
not
qualify.
really correct. So we felt this was really important, and we just awarded our scholarship for the third year in a row. And I tell you, it's so meaningful and it's so personal to give back to these students. They are amazing, amazing people. And I feel an honor and a privilege to be able to have just a small part of providing them hope for their future.
Yeah.
So
It's empowering, and it's an extension of your love and giving hope.
yeah, and acknowledging everything that they have accomplished, despite this chronic illness that they may have. So that's one branch of our foundation. The second branch is our website, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a pool of all the resources available, both locally. It's mostly local, but we also have national resources available on our website. And it's organizations that offer mental health care to adolescents, especially. And that ranges anywhere from inpatient facilities to facilities that offer criminal justice management. And some people might not understand what that means, but what that is when you, actually, it's not even just here in San Mateo County, but a lot of times the response to a mental health crisis is from your local police department or law enforcement.
Yes.
And that can really be traumatizing to a young person who is going through a mental health crisis. And it also can be a very unfortunate funnel that steers them into the direction of the criminal justice system as opposed to the mental health help that they need. So when that happens, parents are, again, at a loss. Where do they turn in order to make sure that their child receives the care that they need, which is almost never incarceration.
Right. Because then we become stigmatized.
Yeah, and again, it's traumatizing. It moves them in a direction that they don't belong. They really do require health care, mental health care, not incarceration. So our website has resources that, like I said, or it highlights organizations in the area that handle all kinds of mental health issues, such as criminal justice management, inpatient facilities, group therapy. So all of the things that we wish we had during Andrew's illness.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's not that these organizations don't have websites that you can go to independently. It's that when I was looking for organizations that could provide services, it was like a black hole, or I won't even say a black hole, I'll say a rabbit hole, because I'd click on one website that would send me to another website, and then I'd see another website, and it was just, I could spend hours without really finding what I specifically needed. Yes, and they were all very informative, but again, not necessarily providing specifically what I needed. So that's one of the things our website does. And then the third branch of our foundation is our social media. We try to maintain a high profile on social media, and there are two groups in our social media department. One, which is the Aslan Foundation, and that focuses on mental health awareness and suicide prevention. Yes. And then we also have our Aslan Survivors of Suicide Loss. And that social media outlet is really to support individuals who have had a loss to suicide. And that one is a bit more personal in terms of that really is my voice coming through.
Oh, okay.
The Aslan Foundation social media, which is suicide prevention and mental health, that's really more of
comprehensive, like,
correct.
Overview of educating
Whereas
and resources.
the Aslan survivors of suicide loss really is my voice, my experience, my thoughts. On occasion, we will have one of Andrew's siblings write one of those posts as well. So it's really a very personal family voice that's coming through on that one. And I have to tell you that it's a really supportive community. And I feel for every person that comments on that site, because I hear their pain, I hear their guilt, I hear their regret, I hear everything that they comment on, because we have all felt it as well.
Yes.
So those are the three branches of our foundation, and it keeps me very busy. Things have slowed down. I don't even know if I want to say slowed down. Things have shifted a bit during COVID.
Transformed, yeah.
Yes, so not as much in-person events, obviously, more this type of Zoom interactions. But it's really encouraging to see that there is such an openness to mental health awareness, and even just the number of organizations available that are providing this, as opposed to when we were dealing with it, when Andrew was a freshman in high school. Even that has just grown so much. And as I often say, it's bittersweet, because while I feel so encouraged by it, it's also just really hard
for everything.
Yeah, to think about how could this organization have made a difference in Andrew's life if they were around when he was struggling.
Yeah, and I think that is that, you know, like what you're saying is like it's bittersweet. Like you're grateful that people have that now, but looking back and realizing that that wasn't available for him and your family, it hurts. Like, you know, you wish that you could rewind time and make it possible, but you can't. And so now you're trying to live in the now and trying to provide hope, you know, for others. What I read about it. Can you share a little bit about what was the inspiration behind the name, the Aslan Foundation?
Yeah. So not too many people know this, and I'm not sure if my kids want it to be known, but I actually homeschooled my children for probably about 10-ish years. And one of the things that most of them loved to do was read. Not all of them. Andrew actually preferred comic books, but the majority of them loved to read. And the Chronicles of Narnia was one of their favorites. They loved that type of genre, you know, Lord of the Rings,
Okay.
Chronicles of Narnia. That was, that was one of their favorite genres. And when we were thinking about what name to come up with the foundation, it was really difficult to come up with a name that obviously that we all agreed on, but a name that just kind of encompassed what we wanted to stand for. And we went through so many different suggestions and this and that and the other. And finally we got to, you know, characters in books. And Aslan kind of stood out to all of us in that, if anyone is familiar with the story of the Chronicles of Narnia, it's kind of an alternate universe, and there's, you know, the good and the bad, the evil versus good, and Aslan basically represents hope.
Yes.
Which is really what we wanted our foundation to also represent. You know, one word, hope for so many things, but that was it. And so the Aslan Foundation was born, and we have felt really good about knowing what that name stands for and what we hope to bring to other people.
Yeah, and I think it's very powerful and very valuable to give hope. Like you said, when you're responding to survivors, people impacted by loved ones, that's something you offer is hope. you know, that today you feel this way and there's hope, you know, for you to transition through this. When you're grieving, your grief will stay with you. You know, time will go by and it'll still feel like yesterday, but your ability to maybe touch someone's life who can share your story, unfortunately, that you guys can hold each other up as you navigate going forward.
Yeah, there are so many points that you bring up that I agree with in terms of that comment, just in terms of, you know, everyone at some point in their life will experience loss. That's the world we live in. It just is. And obviously there are some losses in our life that impact us more than others.
Yes.
But we will all experience loss at some point. And to be in that place where you are it is so raw and so tender, and to be able to look around and realize that you are not alone, that everyone has experienced this, and they're all on different points of the journey, but we are all on this same journey. And I always say that, you know, there's a lot of platitudes and trite phrases that are overused that offer no benefit or comfort. And one of those is that, you know, time heals all wounds. And I always disagree with that. And I say, no, time will not heal this wound that I carry, but time will make me stronger so that I can carry it and I can live with it. It will never be okay. It will never be right. Like this, Andrew's death should never have happened. He should be here with us today, right now, living the rest of his life just like his siblings. And that will always affect me, the fact that he's not. But over time, I am definitely stronger today than I was Christmas Day 2017.
Yes.
And that's really the only thing that I can say about time, is that it will make a person stronger. It won't take away their pain. It won't take away their loss. It will make them stronger.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. I think sometimes people, they become uncomfortable and they just say things to people who are grieving and hope that it'll comfort or make it better. But in actuality, it adds more to the pain, because, you know, although they felt that that was appropriate or they felt that was going to be helpful, it really wasn't. And so sometimes people ask, like, you know, what can I do? What can I say? I said, sometimes it's just giving a hug or just being there. It's not necessarily having the right words.
Of course, yeah.
It's just being present. And then another thing is, I don't know if you can relate, is some people don't even want to talk about it because they fear it's gonna bring you pain or hurt you. But in actuality, you know, asking and caring, you know, offering a listening ear to I've had people, my sister passed away back in 2001. I've had people randomly walk up to me and share stories about her. Oh, there's this one time your sister and I, we did this, and, you know, it's a happy memory.
Isn't that the best? Yes.
Yes. And
it's like a gift.
Yeah,
it's a
exactly,
gift that someone gives you.
Perspective of the person you love, you know, and it is a gift, and so that's why I think people need to be given permission to care, to ask, and to not be afraid. Because I think when people act like the white elephant, like there's a white elephant in the room, they act like it's not there, I think it makes you feel more lonely, or it makes you feel more insecure, because you're like, okay, how do I bring this up? You know, because you know, you're not trying to like create this mood of like, you know, when you talk about grief, like, you're not trying to bring people down, but it's part of life, like you said, you know. And I think, like, that's one of the things that when we're talking about what are some key things you wanted to share, it's, normalize talking about mental health, and I think that's what you've been able to do through your foundation. What is one thing you would like to suggest to people to normalize talking about mental health today?
Yeah, I would say start early. Start talking about it early when your kids are young, and give not just yourself, but also give your children feeling words so that they are able to recognize how they're feeling and give it a word so that you can communicate on the same level. You're talking the same language, you're on the same page. I think that that's really important because so many people, I mean, let's be honest, they're not comfortable talking about feelings.
Or
And
they were never given permission to, like our
correct.
parents, our grandparents. It's like, you just do what I say. I don't want to hear it. You don't talk back.
Right.
And so you now we're trying to teach our kids to express themselves. Like,
Yeah.
this is important. This is valuable. So it
Yeah.
goes against what we were taught.
Definitely. So yeah, give your, like, come up with the vocabulary yourself that you are comfortable using that's appropriate, and share that with your children so that you give them words to describe their feelings and how they're feeling. And you have to start with yourself, obviously, because if you as a parent aren't comfortable with it, your kids are going to sense that a mile away, and they're not going to be comfortable. So you have to get to a place where you're comfortable and think about it in terms of, not only is this life or death, I mean, obviously, but it's just like their physical health. We don't have, it shouldn't be separate, mental and physical. It's all part of the same body. So just like you would talk to them about their tummy ache or their headache, talk to them about their heartache, talk to them about, how, are they sad? Are they happy? Are they excited? Are they anxious? What does that mean? How does that feel? So again, start early. Obviously, if a parent is past that point in their child's age and, they're junior high, high school, well, where do I start now? Again, you have to come up with words that you're comfortable using and then start using them around your child. One of the things that I've heard say that I felt was a really appropriate terminology was that when kids become, in that junior high, high school age, and they're already somewhat difficult to communicate with, yeah, how do you talk to them about these things? And what was highlighted was that you really need to try to connect with them before you can actually correct them. So that can be challenging because so many parents are so focused on so many other things.
Yeah. Sometimes you get so focused on academics,
Yeah.
right? Especially right now with the pandemic and distance learning. It's not like you've done it for years, but for some people it's new. And if you have multiple kids, and they're in different schools and you're trying to adjust that's been overwhelming for people.
Yeah, and I'm going to be the first to admit I was not perfect at this at all. I think homeschooling the kids did give us the opportunity to connect quite a bit, but I was not comfortable talking about feelings. I didn't have the language. To me, it was like, if we all get along and everything seems good, then it is good, right? And that's definitely not the case. I mean, I don't want to sit here and say, oh, I did it all right, because obviously I did not. And if you were to ask any of my kids, they will be the first to tell you, yeah, no, she didn't do it right all the time.
Right.
And when my kids have kids, they'll realize how difficult that really is to do. But hopefully at that point, they will have some type of a different base, a different foundation than I did. And they can build off of that, which will be more healthy in terms of communicating and talking with their kids regarding feelings.
Yeah, and honestly, you did the best that you could with what resources you had. And so hopefully they'll have better access to resources so that they can be more effective, as parents themselves. And even for us, like showing a lot of grace and mercy to ourselves as we're learning, because we're not going to know everything as parents. As much as
Yeah.
we love our children, um, we're not perfect, and we're not going to know everything. And like when you're researching the resources, there's not going to always be the perfect resource that you need for your family, and so learning to persevere and keep searching. But I think the great thing is, for what you've been through and what you guys have created uh, on the website a resource for people to find, and then that could prompt them to find more resources, like, oh, I never thought to look, like, to look at it that way, and then it could prompt them to something better, in if they're not in California, in San Mateo, maybe somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
um there was something else that you had brought up that you wanted to discuss. I know normalizing, sorry, I'm trying to look at, for normalize talking about mental health. And then the other thing you wanted to share about was seeking appropriate care. Now that you're where you are today, what is the one thing that you recommend for parents with children? Do they call their medical plan? Do they call your child's pediatrician? What would be something you suggest for them to as a starting point?
Yeah, so depending on the age of their child, if their child is a minor, then and it also depends on what they're noticing. Is there an immediate crisis, or is this something that you're just starting to notice symptoms emerging, and it's something that you're keeping your eye on and not sure what to do next? So obviously, in the case of a mental health crisis, you would need to look at the situation, and with whatever you're seeing, try to decide what is the most appropriate care that my child needs right now. I'm going to tell you right up front that sometimes 911 is necessary. It is not always the easiest thing to do, and it is not always, I would say that's almost one of your last resorts. It's not the first thing you want to do. Depending on what the crisis is, the first thing you want to be able to do is de-escalate.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes a parent can do that themselves, sometimes they can't. If your child is in crisis and you have to call 911, please specifically ask for a team who has been trained in mental health crises, because you don't want a police officer who has not been trained in de-escalation to show up at your door, to take your child in handcuffs. And all of these things can happen, and that's not always
happened.
And has happened, and that's just not always appropriate. So when I say to seek appropriate care, these are the things to keep in mind. Depending on what you are experiencing, what your child is experiencing, really does determine how you should respond. Now, if these are just symptoms that you're starting to see manifesting, not in crisis, but just, that seems odd, or why is my child doing this? Then definitely start with your pediatrician. Your pediatrician will be able to guide you, but unfortunately, there are issues with insurance. There's issues with finding clinicians who will take children.
Because that's not their specialty.
Yeah. And it's very unfortunate, but I do understand that, you know, psychiatrists / psychologists, they need to earn a living. And when they see a specific type of patient, there's not always very good insurance reimbursement. So there's very little motivation to go into that specialty.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Like
Yeah.
they're gonna go where they know they're gonna get reimbursed for the medical coverage.
Yeah.
Although maybe they could be able to service, is just the 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 loopholes or the
Yeah.
it's difficult, and so they're gonna revert to what is the best way for them to be compensated for their services.
Yeah. And
Depending
that's, I
on
mean, that's a very harsh reality, but that is the bottom line, that you won't find a lot of pediatric psychiatrists because it's so specialized, unless there's, you know, either a major medical facility in your area that's also, you know, maybe a teaching hospital, or where there's research being done. There's just not a lot of motivation for these clinicians to go into that specialty. Now, I don't want to generalize too much, because I definitely have to acknowledge that there are clinicians out there that go into that field despite what reimbursement is, because they want to make a difference. And that's, you know, to be applauded, because there is such a need.
Mm-hmm.
There is such a need. So, you know, those are the two extremes in terms of, you know, minor symptoms that you're happening to notice over time and calling your pediatrician, versus a crisis where you may have to call 911. The other thing I want to bring up about a mental health crisis, that really, if it was available during Andrew's illness, we weren't aware of it, but there are facilities now that are offering they're offering stabilization units. So it's not an emergency room.
Oh.
And a parent can drive their child there, can stay with their child while the medical team at this unit stabilizes and de-escalates the situation. They will then reassess after the crisis is over and determine whether the child needs to go to an inpatient unit, or if the child can be discharged with parents and just follow up with a mental health professional. So there's a lot of, you know, there's a spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
But it really is looking at your particular situation and evaluating what type of care does my child need right now. Now, if your child is over 18, that's a completely different set of rules and circumstances. So I'm not going to go too deep into that, other than this one very, very important aspect of it. If your child has ever had a history of mental illness, once they reach 18, you will no longer have access to their medical records. You will not have a voice in their care or treatment, their discharge. And what you have to do prior to them, you don't even have to do it prior to them becoming 18, but do it when they are in a healthy space, is have them fill out I'm drawing a blank as to what the name of it is, but basically,
like a power of attorney, or
it's an advance directive, basically.
Oh, okay.
That says that has the person's name and says, I authorize, you know, insert parent's name, to have access to my records, to know about my treatment plan, and you can list a variety of things, so that when they're in crisis, not thinking clearly, no one is, everyone's trying to figure out, what do I do? And you get to that point of care, parents will then be able to support their child, as opposed to being, you know, not being even allowed on the unit, which can happen.
Because of their privacy, because they're adults and they're not kids anymore.
Yes. And there is a link.
Would they go through, for the advanced directive, would they go through their pediatric, or would they have to go to a psychiatrist?
No, actually, there's a link on our website. It's called a Psychiatric Advanced Directive, I believe. There's a link on our website, and it's basically just a form that they fill out, and everyone signs it. And I don't recall if it needs to be notarized, but it can become part of the patient's medical record. There's also something that parents should consider doing, whether or not their child is a minor or over 18, and that is establish a safety plan. We did that with Andrew, and it was basically coming up with a plan that everyone is in agreement with, everyone is comfortable with, so that there is a plan in place no matter what the situation is. Everyone knows what to expect. For example, if a parent finds that the child is cutting, have a discussion with the child. This is going to be the plan. If I find that you're cutting, we are going to do ABC. So the parent knows what to do, the child knows what to expect, and that's the plan. And it just makes everything very clear cut. And
like real like open lines of communication prior to the crisis.
Correct. Yeah. So all of these things are really important when you are dealing with someone who has a mental illness. And you may even want to consider it if, you know, your child is not necessarily struggling, but, you know, the adolescent years are very tumultuous. And depression is not uncommon. Anxiety is not uncommon. And having a conversation with your child about those things and how they can affect them and what can be done, how can the child be supported by parents, all of these conversations are just so valuable to have prior to any of this ever even manifesting.
Yeah, and I think that is the first time I've ever heard of that, and I think it's important because you're right. Like if you can have a conversation prior to the crisis and, you know, be able to come up with, okay, this is what we're gonna do, these are the plans, or even like doing the what is it again, the
Psychiatric Advanced Directives.
Yeah, Psychiatric Advanced Directive. That helps you to know that, you know, you're going the extra mile to be able to meet the needs, you know, for your child, you know, as a teen, and then when they get older, whether or not they want to, at least you know that these are your options and that you can pursue it, and hope that you can be there for them.
Yeah, and the child can completely participate in this when, you know, you come up with a safety plan and the child said, and let's just say, for example, the question is, you know, if I'm having a panic attack, this is who I want you to call, or this is what makes me feel better, or please remind me to breathe or to ground myself. Like it's almost just another tool in the toolbox of how to support your child in their life, basically.
Because everybody has different needs, and you know, I'm really grateful that you shared that, because I've, you know, been involved with friends that have had family members die by suicide, but I don't know if they even knew about what you're sharing today, and I think it's valuable, and you know, I hope people can like research it and look into it, so that they don't feel like there's no options and there's no, you know, it like what we talked about, like connecting the dots and you being able to provide hope and guidance to people, you know, whether or not people take it, that's their decision, but that you offer it for people to be able to access it.
Yeah, and I have to also admit that a lot of this we didn't know prior, and wish we had.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, just even the Psychiatric Advanced Directive, I mean, that in itself it's powerful, because like you said, when they hit 18, it's like you can't do anything. You know what I mean? As far as being able to understand what's going on, you're locked out.
Yeah.
Whereas now you know that there's an option for you to be able to stay involved, in their care. And if they become incapable of making decisions for themselves, that you already had a discussion with them prior to, and that you're able to communicate their needs, even if at the moment they can't, but that they already had expressed, this is what I want, and then you can be that voice for them. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm really grateful that you share that. Uh, do you know what can happen like after the fact if they turn 18? Is there any other way? Did you find another resource? Because the advanced directive is done before they turn 18.
No, the advanced directive can be done at any point in time.
Okay, so even after they turn 18.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So when a child turns 18 legally, they don't have to include parents. But I have also noticed that as a child reaches adolescence, parents are frequently not included in a care plan. So it's beneficial to have one even prior to 18, even if it's not the legal document, to have something, some type of understanding, some type of conversation, something in writing saying, this is what we have discussed, this is what I'm comfortable with, what my child is comfortable with, this is what we've agreed upon. I think just the fact that you have these conversations with your child already opens things up to your child knowing that you want to be involved, that you are going to support them no matter what, because that's another topic for maybe another day, but kids can feel like they're a burden, that their mental illness is a burden on the family. And why can't they just be like, their sibling who doesn't have to deal with all of these things? And it really does open up a conversation to let them know that, we're here. We're not giving up. This is something, you are loved. You are not a burden. We are committing to get you through this. We will be your safety net no matter what. And being able to express that and just let that child know that that they are and always will be a valued member, loved member, beloved, treasured member of the family,
Yes.
in itself can be powerful.
Yeah, it can provide that's like you said, the safety net, and the reminder that they're loved, that although they don't feel they can be loved for what they're going through, that they are loved and that they're supported. And everybody handles life differently and whatnot, but I really appreciate just the way you are addressing it, and helping other family members to navigate and not feel alone in this, because now what all you can do is put that information out there for others.
Yeah And it was a resource that was needed. I don't want to de-emphasize any of the work that any of the other organizations out there are doing. They're amazing. They're incredible. They are, on the front lines. I'm just trying to make it easier for families to find them.
Yeah, no, and that's great. Like you said, it was a rabbit hole for you, like finding things. And so, you're just trying to minimize people having to go, and maybe the information that you have isn't what they need, but at least you have tried to create it in an organized manner so that it'll help them to be able to guide them better than when you're Googling and trying to find things.
Pages and pages, Google just, it sent me everywhere. like I said, definitely you can be hours on the internet trying to find
And
something
days.
that, mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you just lose hope because you're like, this is too much. You know what I
It
mean?
is. It's information overload.
Hmm. Well, I'm so grateful just for your time and, you know, what you're doing for Andrew, your family, and the other families, that you guys are making a difference, and that this can touch someone else's life, who can also make a difference by caring, you know, whether it's, you know, if they decide to start their own foundation or to do a fundraiser, or if they guide people back to what the resources you have, or people share their stories, you know, bringing hope and healing. Healing is, it's an ongoing process. It's not a quick fix. Grief, it's a journey. It's a personal journey, and everybody's gonna be able to process differently. Uh, and like you said, like we're all gonna face some kind of loss, uh, some that we expect and some that are more tragic. Yet, you know, that connects us in some shape, way, or form. So can you share on what is the best way to find your foundation, the website,
Yeah.
and then your Instagram account?
Yes. So our website is the aslanfoundation.org. Our Instagram is the Aslan Foundation. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we also have Aslan Survivors of Suicide Loss. And we're both on Instagram and on Facebook. And I just want to say thank you so much for having me on today. It's always, I always say that Andrew will always be the face of our foundation, but I am his voice. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and share his story, and hopefully give hope to other families that are dealing with some of the same issues that we have had to deal with over these years.
Yeah, it's definitely an honor and a privilege for you to share your voice. And you know, I know that a lot of parents can resonate with you, you know, and survivors can appreciate your efforts. And so thank you for what you do. Hold on just a second. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this episode with Healing with Aloha. Have a great day. Aloha.